Hello everyone and welcome to the Zero Project Conference 2025. We are focusing on ICT, as always, but also on employment. I'm Malgorzata Grobelna and I'm with the Zero Project. I'm the program manager here. But I wasn't always here at the Zero Project, even though it's such a great place to be. I used to work with the Jim Foundation in Poland and Autism Europe. And this is how I met this wonderful person who will be joining me during this interview, James. And what we will be talking about is the Neurodiversity Employer Index and how it can lead the way for neuro-inclusion in the workplace. James, can you introduce yourself and tell us where you are from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm James Cusack. I'm the Chief Executive of Autistica. Before joining Autistica, I was an academic. I used to work in autism research up in Scotland in a place called Aberdeen. I became interested in autism because I'm autistic myself, and I became really interested in how we could use things like evidence to really try and make a difference to autistic people's lives. So I did a lot of work in Scotland, working directly with autistic people, working with their families, but also working on things like autism policy. So that's what made me so excited to join Autistica and try and join all of that up.
And I think that UK is a great example on how you can lead the research on autism because you have so many great researchers there based in the UK. You have also many great organizations that are led by autistic people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a key part of what Autistica tries to do. What we've tried to establish ourselves as is the UK's leading autism research and campaigning charity. And what we're really trying to think about is how we can take research and ensure that it makes a difference to the lives of autistic people. And so with that in mind, we've got some really clear goals for 2030 around making sure autistic people are diagnosed and identified and have the right support in place, ensuring that there's treatments for anxiety in place, ensuring there's annual health checks for autistic people, that public spaces are more accessible, that attitudes change and are more positive towards autistic people, and in the context of today, to see the employment rate double for autistic people as well.
Exactly, because I think that the neurodiverse talent, and I'm not only talking about autism, I think about ADHD and all of the other people on the neurodiverse spectrum, they are really the talent that the employers are seeking right now. I mean, we have Atos here at the conference, and their project is pretty amazing for all people that are on the spectrum. But if you can pinpoint a connection and why this movement is so important for artistic people and for the employers. Maybe you can show us a link between neurodiversity and employment.
So one of the key things that we've established in the UK is that employment rates for autistic people are very low, and they're low compared to the disabled population, but also the general population as well. So we see that in autism, about 3 in 10 autistic people are in work, whereas about 5 in 10 disabled people are in work, and about 8 in 10 of the general population are in work. So clearly that's not acceptable. There's a real opportunity to change that. But what we also recognise is that by focusing on something like neurodiversity, you're not just thinking about autism, you're thinking about the fact that everyone in your workforce thinks about the world and understands the world in a different way. And that's really beneficial for employers when they begin to think in this way, because what they're really thinking about is how do they maximize the performance of every single employee in their workforce. So it's not just simply about getting more autistic people into your workforce, it's about creating or being an employer which is enabling for everyone. And so we've really began to spend some time thinking about what is the most effective way that we can support employers.
Did you cooperate with any kind of corporate or firm to have a special employment program for autistic people? Was that something that you played around before you dig into the research about it?
Yeah, so initially what we did, we started this work around 10 years ago, and we were really just collecting data, trying to understand what people's experiences were, and we worked with large companies as well on different types of schemes and different types of approaches, understanding what the experiences of employers were, and we realized that people like Deutsche Bank, they were really helpful in terms of building a knowledge bank in terms of what works, what doesn't work. How can you build things like internship schemes for that really work for autistic people as well? And that was absolutely really beneficial to us, and that really helped us to build the Neurodiversity Employers Index, which is a tool that enables us to support employers to understand how they can sort of maximally reap the benefits of neurodiversity in the workplace. So to try and ensure that their workplace practices support autistic people and people with ADHD and other forms of neurodivergence into work, but also benefit your whole workforce as well.
And how does the index work? Do you go and audit the employer, or what are you doing with that?
So what we realized is that people are becoming increasingly aware and increasingly understanding of the word neurodiversity. So they understand that it exists and that it's a thing now, but people are unsure about what it is that they do next, and so they become quite anxious around it. So we got to a stage where we had increased awareness, but not necessarily the intention to act yet or the action. And so what we're trying to do is to try and remove some of the barriers. And what we realized is that people needed a supportive tool in place that showed them the way and gave them supportive recommendations on what they can do in the context of their workplace. So what people do is they sign up online, and we have a specific period where we collect data, and it asks people about their approach to reasonable adjustments. It asks their employees about their experiences and what we deliver, and what their approach is to things like recruitment, how are they supporting autistic people and other types of neurodivergence and other types of neurodiversity in the workplace around things like promotion. And then they get a personalised report back and a grade based on how they're performing. The whole idea is that we celebrate different forms of success that different employers have, but also we have evidence-based recommendations for where they can make improvements. So the idea is what we're trying to do for this index is really catalyse a cycle of progress for individual employers, but not only do that, but also see in a more global sense, how are employers doing that are participating in this tool? Are we seeing progress? Where are we seeing progress as well? And I think it's really, really exciting for us as an organisation, because hopefully we're building buy-in from employers. We think that we've already reached about 500,000 employees in the UK through the index, and understanding what sort of practice is going on, and then supporting employers to make changes in their practice. So that, that's a massive impact for us, and so we're reaching those people, but we're also gathering the evidence on an annual basis, and hopefully we'll begin to understand where changes are happening and where changes are maybe not happening, and understanding why they're not happening, what the barriers are. So it's a gradual supportive approach with employers, which I think will really, really help us to see the change for neurodivergent people.
I think that one thing that is really clear here is the benefit that the company, the employer can have here. But if you could go even wider, I don't know, think about, I don't know, policies or some kind of, politics that can be improved at the workplaces. Are you also thinking about using that tool to improve them?
Yep, so one of the things that led to the Neurodiversity Employers Index was a government review led by, which was commissioned by our Prime Minister at the time on autism employment, and this was called the Buckland Review. And that began to look at different barriers within the state that we have towards accessing employment. How can benefits be changed? How can government initiatives be changed? We really managed to build the evidence to show that supported employment schemes are really cost effective for governments in terms of trying to get autistic people into work. So we now have really strong support within government for doing supported employment schemes as well. And that's not all autistic people that approach is not right for all autistic people, but for some autistic people, it's invaluable. And what we're trying to do is create a suite of solutions that really enable autistic people. And so that review has really laid the ground in the UK for trying to change that employment number. And I think the other thing where we've had a huge amount of success is in convincing the government to collect data on how many autistic people are in work as well. I think that the area where we're beginning to do more work with government is getting them to realise that preparing autistic people for work, it's not just like they get to work age and then yeah, and then all of a sudden they're magically ready for work. Like as an autistic person, I sort of feel like you have more barriers than most people in place. Like there are lots of things and experiences that you have in life which build your readiness for work, which aren't just simply about what school qualifications you gather. And what we find is when you look at graduate data from autistic people, you've got these exceptionally qualified people who are really struggling to get jobs, who are really struggling to get into work. And so there are huge questions that I think that we need to be thinking around, and we're beginning to do some research around. How do we build autistic people's resilience, readiness for work? How do we support them to advocate for what adjustments that they need as they enter into the workplace as well? Because simply just changing the workplace is not going to be enough. We need to be building that support for autistic people from the moment they get that diagnosis, and supporting autistic people's ambitions around accessing employment as well, and helping them to understand that that's something that's feasible and realistic for them, because otherwise I think sometimes people unintentionally create a poverty of ambition as well. And that actually, if we want to create autonomous, independent, empowered autistic people, that's about creating the set of solutions that work for them. And that's not that's also acknowledging that there are autistic people for whom work might not be the right thing for them, but for those who are, how do we support them?
I think that is something that not many people really know, because they don't know how hard it is to design something that can be individualized. They are thinking about the universal approach, but in the wrong way. They are thinking for one fits all. It doesn't work like that.
No.
But you're talking about UK, but do you have ambitions to go more global, more international? If you wanted to talk with people from the global community that is here at Zero Project right now, what would you tell him? How would you pitch to them?
So, I mean, I think the thing I would say is we're a UK-based organisation typically, but I think we want to have more international reach. And what we hear, I think what makes us globally unique within the autism space and potentially neurodiversity space is the way that we take research and try to make sure it has a practical impact on autistic people's life. And we've got certain values in terms of how we do that, in terms of how we involve autistic people. The fact that a third of our staff are autistic, the fact that we've got lots of research expertise in-house, the way that we do policy and communications thinking, and so on. So we're quite unique as an organisation in terms of how we operate and how we develop solutions. I would love to build partnerships to ensure that this index has greater reach beyond the UK, because I think it's a globally relevant tool, to be honest with you. And I'd like to see workplaces not just in the UK but across the world changing their practices, and we've got all sorts of solutions like that we're developing in the UK, which I think are globally relevant. And for us, we don't have the scale to roll this out globally. So for us, it's working with partners really in order to have that impact, and in order to not just reach and impact autistic people in the UK, but to see the effects on autistic people, the effects on society, and actually the effects this can have on our economy if we get this right, to be realised globally, not just nationally.
Okay, I think that we know who your audience here is, and I'm sure that some people will approach you today, but we still have 2 more days of this conference going on, so I'm sure that you will be able to connect with other people. We have 30 seconds left. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Just to say that I think that I think sometimes, particularly in this political climate, people worry about making these arguments, but I actually think this is a business argument. You know, when we talk about neurodiversity, we treat human beings like they're homogenous drones, and that they're like a bit like we sort of see the brain a bit like the heart, like it's just pretty similar from person to person. Actually, the brain is extremely diverse. It works in extremely different ways, and actually, for companies to maximize their effectiveness, they need to embrace this issue. It's not a nice thing to do. It's just effective business to do this as well. So I think that's a really key point to hit with employers.
And on that note, we are ending this great interview at the Fireside Chat. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.